Speaking of A/B tests, we have
Great transition.
we have the essential digital fundraising principles learned from A/B testing with the one and only Jeff Giddens, president of at NextAfter. And so Jeff Giddens is responsible for leading client relationships by growing the capacity and effectiveness of their digital fundraising programs. So he's had a decade-long nonprofit career consulting a number of organizations, including Compassion International and Mercy Ships. He's spoken at a number of conferences, including AFP International, TEDx, DMA Nonprofit Federation, and more. So we are thrilled. We love NextAfter. We've had just an incredible session from your colleague, Nathan, and I'm super excited to learn more from your expertise today. So
cool. Well, I'm going to immediately deflate that balloon, say, I think the thing that actually defines us, and I want to talk a little bit about this in the front, at NextAfter, is that we aren't experts. We have learned a lot. In fact, I'm not sure that marketing experts exist. And I hope if you're listening to that, that's a relief, because if you're like me, you've been in a situation where someone says, well, tell us what to do. And you're like, I'm not really sure. Well, the truth is we're not really sure either. We've learned a lot, and I'm excited to share with you what we've learned by actually listening to who I believe is the true experts, which are the donors. I want to tell you a little bit about our company first, not as any sort of sales pitch. We don't really do that, but it kind of helps you understand why we run all of these experiments. So there's kind of three parts to NextAfter. The first part is a research lab, and the research lab is a key part of our organization, and it is trying to understand the answer to one question, which is what makes people say yes to giving. I think most people on this webinar today are equally interested in that question. And so we run all sorts of experiments. We've run more than 3,500 now, trying to understand the answer to that question. What makes people say yes to giving? We do a lot of teaching and training. We have a conference we put on every year, the NEO Summit, and we do that as part of our institute. And then we consult with clients who say, hey, come try to figure out why our donors say yes, and engineer those learnings to make fundraising results go up. But I say all this to reiterate the fact that I think one of the fundamental things that you have to buy into, and a lot of people do buy into, is this. It's like we don't know it works, right? But there's good news. It's not just what we don't know. We know how to find out. And that's why we run so many experiments. And today I'm going to walk you through a ton of experiments that we've run in the last several months to try to understand what makes people say yes to giving. And I think that my hope is that at the end of this, that you will be able to take these learnings and test them yourselves or engineer them into your own fundraising program to get more people to say yes. As we know, we live in a culture that you're just constantly bombarded by ads and commercials and companies that are trying to get you to buy stuff. And everyone here that represents a nonprofit organization knows that there are causes that matter a lot more than just stacking up stuff. And so we get the joyous opportunity every day of waking up and trying to convince people to part with our money. And the more effective we are at that, the more that we can give people the joy of giving. So we've built this research library, and you can go see it at nextafter.com/experiments, because we published them all. As we've run experiments, trying to unlock generosity. So, we've run all sorts of experiments, testing this donation page versus that donation page, right? And finding out that one gets 135% lift in donations, and an 87% increase in average gifts, and a 340% increase in revenue. And then we have to try to break down why. Well, what is it? Is it like these elements of friction on the form? Is it difficult to fill out? Is there no value proposition presented? And then what is it that we're actually learning works? And we developed a lot of, we don't really like the word best practices, but we've developed a lot of better starting points along the way that you can take and engineer. And we do this really based on what people do, not just what they say. So that's kind of the fundamental thesis supporting that concept of we don't know what we don't know until donors tell us so. We take this and turn this all into all sorts of research and training, as I mentioned. If you are interested, we have this conference happening in Austin in September called the NEO Summit, where we bring other people who do similar testing from the for-profit world and all sorts of reveal all sorts of cool experiments that this thing is, if you're like, hey, these are my sort of people. But we produced this thing called the Quarterly Research Journal. If you want one, I can make sure you can get a digital copy. Just let me know. And we like to publish and circulate our best fundraising research, so the best experiments that we run. This is part of our mission. We're not a nonprofit, but we're very much a cause-based organization. Our mission is to discover what works in fundraising and distribute it as widely as possible, because we don't believe that we can unleash the most generous generation in human history on our own. It requires every one of you as well. So I'm going to walk you through some of the most interesting experiments that we found here today, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. Candace, I don't know how you're doing questions, if they want to drop them in using Q&A or whatever, but anytime we do these sorts of presentations, people have questions. So we'll field all those at the end rather than as we go. All right, the first experiment, how converting video to text affects donor conversion. So video, super popular in nonprofitdom for good reason. Video is a very interactive, engaging medium. Everyone here has seen videos that make chills run down their spine. And this is something that can really motivate people to give. So we were working with an organization called E3 Partners. They were raising money for COVID relief in India, and they put together this video. This one of the key things that E3 Partners does. They have a great video production capacity, and we were looking at this, and they came to like, hey, this campaign is just not working. It's not raising as much money as we believe that it should, because it was a very relevant issue, strong value proposition. The video was compelling, and something popped into our head that someone told me one time, and he was an older gentleman, so he kind of fit into the general age demographic that we see at the kind of the donor class. And he said this, and it stopped me in my tracks. He said, my reading bit rate is faster than my watching bit rate. And what he meant by that was his ability to scan and absorb information. He could do that faster through text than he could when he was being forced to have it be revealed to him at the pace of the videographer, the video production people. And that stuck with me. And so we took the contents of that video and we transcribed it word for word so that there was no difference in the message that was being portrayed, only the medium. We put that on the page. And this was really, really challenging for a group that loves video. They love to make videos. They were very confident they had made a really compelling video. We thought they had made a compelling video. But the challenge was that people weren't getting it. And so they were willing to test it. And so we took this video donation page and we used Google Optimize, which is a free tool that split traffic 50-50 with this text-based donation page. What we saw was a 527% increase in donations. Which was astounding. And I want to talk for just a second about this. This is statistical validity. And so when you are running tests, you want to make sure that you've achieved two things. Number one, you've achieved a valid sample size, which means your test has been shown to enough people that you can be confident that it's not just a couple of people swaying the results. And then number two, you want to make sure you have a valid level of confidence, which means that the difference in performance and conversion rate between the two is going to produce to 95% more, or 95% of the time or more. And what you see here is the vast difference between these two pages, a 0.65% conversion rate versus a 4.1% conversion rate. What that required, there's a statistical power calculation behind this, is a sample size of 149 people. In order to be valid, we had 3,351 people that saw it as samples. And so it's 99% valid. So what this means is this is going to produce a 527% lift 99.9% of the time. It's very important because you will see a lot of people say we tested this versus that. And you should always ask to see this slide so you can know that it's going to be valid. But we learned that number one, people went back to this comment and validated it for us in some way, right? My reading bit rate is faster than my watching bit rate. I think that's a part of the learnings here. I think another powerful force is autonomy. And so giving people the ability to read through at their own pace and say, we're not going to force you to absorb this message at our pace. We're going to let you read through it yourselves. I think there's also like some other factors in this where people may have not been in a place where they can watch a video, like on mobile devices, maybe in public, but they were in a place where they could read it. Also there's a lot of scientific research that shows that your brain is less active when you're watching TV than when you're sleeping. And so there's something in the video that actually puts people in a more like docile state and less likely to take action. So all those roll up into a big increase. We've tested this across different organizations, different campaigns. We have seen times when video does aid conversion for things like lead generation, but when presented with a donation page, I've not seen many instances where a video outperforms that donation page or the text on that donation page. So something you can take, doesn't mean that video doesn't have its place in terms of cultivation and motivating people, but on the donation page, we've seen time and time again that the text outperforms video. So I briefly mentioned autonomy there. Autonomy is a really, really powerful force in fundraising. And what that means is, and this is I know a lot of people in this webinar already know this, but autonomy is, giving your donors the power and the control. So there's a lot of research. I know Jeff Brooks at Future Fundraising Now talks about this, about the concept of asking someone to consider giving versus telling someone to give. But I want to show you some experiments that kind of build on autonomy. And this is with just email acquisition. So this is called How Instituting a Micro Ask Affects Email Acquisition Rate. So we're running some experiments with a partner of ours, Save the Children, and they have this pop-up when you go to their site, and it says, sign up to stay informed. And one of their goals was to get more email subscribers so they could go and raise money at will. And we looked at this, and based on experience, we came up with, or based on all the experiments we've run and the experience we have from running those, we said, well, we've learned a lot about what makes people say yes to signing up newsletters. So let's try some of these things. We built out a design of experiments. And the first thing was sign up to stay informed doesn't tell you a lot about what you're going to get or why you should sign up specifically. And so we use this concept of communal language, which I'll unpack a little bit later, to affirm the reader. And we get, obviously there's a lot more copy here. Your desire to help kids gives us strength to keep fighting for their future. Thank you. The great news is you're not alone. There's a community that believes in these kids' future. We'd love you to stay connected with stories and updates using the form below. We ran this, and there was a 1% increase in emails acquired with 13% level of confidence. And so what that means is 13% of the time you'll get a 1% increase, and the rest of the time we don't know what will happen. So the short way to say this is no difference, nothing changed, right? So back to the drawing board. We said, hey, sign up to stay informed. That's a command. What if we talked about what they got instead? So get updates and stay connected, right? So not a command, but an offer, if you will. And we saw a 7% decrease in emails acquired. That was based on a 77% statistical level of confidence. So 77% of the time, we're going to see a 7% decrease. Not statistically valid, but trending downward. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, all right, sign up to stay informed. How are we going to beat this bad boy? And we looked at this, and this is a kind of a psychological concept about affirmation. So you're right to be concerned. So we kept the actual call to action there, sign up to stay informed, the same. But we tried to reach out and affirm the user. And we saw a 3% lift with 25% statistical level of confidence. So 25% of the time, we're going to get a 3% lift, which means no change. And by this time, our team was going nuts. Like, how on earth are we going to move this needle? And one of our developers actually pointed this out. It's a really cool reminder that a great idea can come from anywhere. He said, when you look at this form, you're asking people to do something that seems very simple, but you're making an assumption about these people, and that is that they want to stay informed. There's a micro step that happens before this, which is someone says, yes, I want to stay informed. And he said, why don't we actually put that on the form itself? So if the answer is no, they never even see the form. So we built this thing that said, would you like to stay informed? Yes, no. And then once you clicked it, you saw the exact same form. So the control, we had the traditional pop-up, the treatment, we had this yes. And then if they clicked yes, we presented them with that. And we saw a 35% increase in emails acquired. It was statistically valid, in terms of sample size and in terms of the level of confidence. And our team was overjoyed. Save the Children was overjoyed because they were getting more emails with the same amount of traffic, because we took this micro ask and we put it in front of somebody. And that reminds us of a principle that we talk about a lot, which is the first step is getting someone to care, right? A lot of times as fundraisers, we know the impact to it, that we forget how far away the donors are from it. And so the first step is we have to get somebody to care before we can get them to take action. Now, sometimes this can all happen at once. Sometimes, your copy on the actual form itself can motivate people to care. But, what we saw here was that putting autonomy in the donor's hands and giving them this, rather than saying sign up, which is a command, but giving them the chance to respond to, would they like to stay informed, produced a large increase in emails acquired. So big win there that you can use in your fundraising as well. I'll show you another experiment. How implied social proof affects email acquisition rates. So social proof, very powerful force. If you don't know this guy, his name is Robert Cialdini. He's one of the premier psychologists that studies the science of persuasion, decision science, and he loves social proof, talks about it a lot in his seminal book called Influence. You see social proof everywhere, right? Social proof shows up. That's why Amazon customer reviews are so effective, right? Because you can see that other people have taken this product and reviewed it and are willing to tell you what they think, right? And social proof is a key part of liking. Liking is a psychological concept, right? People have to like something in order to kind of move towards it and make the initial step towards making that decision. But it leads to repeat behaviors and that sort of thing. And we were working with a group called the National Breast Cancer Foundation, and they had a content offer they were using to build their list that was a breast health risk guide, and it kind of helped people make good decisions for their health. And it was getting a decent amount of sign-up traffic, but they wanted to increase that. They said, hey, we're spending money to promote this, and we want to be able to tell our donors that we're doing everything within our power to be as effective as possible with reaching as many women as possible. And so they wanted to run some experiments on this. And so they said, looking at this page, what do we believe might help increase the email acquisition rate on this page? And one of the things as we were analyzing that popped out is, especially with anything sort of medically related, you want to know that it is trustworthy, right? So National Breast Cancer Foundation has a certain brand reputation and people who trust them and know them, but new people who are signing up may not. And so they said, how do we show people that this is trustworthy? And so we tried something that uses a principle called mimesis, which basically says that people are likely to do what they know other people will do, even if they don't want to admit that's why they're doing it. So we took this book page and we said, hey, let's, they had a woman who stopped by their office to pick up a copy of this, and they took her picture, and they'd done this several months earlier. And we put this woman, her name is Brenda, on the page. And I noticed that it was kind of interesting in this, she's wearing a blue dress, but it kind of looks like scrubs. So it may lend some like unintentional medical, social proof or authority, I guess, to this. But the only real changes we made was we put their logo tall at the top, kept the copy the same, And we put this picture of Brenda on here, and we saw a 7% lift in emails acquired by doing this. And the question why is that we as humans, we don't want to be the only one doing something, right? That's why, as we mentioned, Amazon customer reviews work. We want to know that someone's gone there before us, and they have proven that something is trustworthy. And what this kind of fascinatingly revealed was that we didn't say anything about who this was. We just showed a person who is doing something very powerful in this photo, which is smiling. Right, smiling is a key factor. It's one of the things that psychologists talk about in this concept of liking. Like, people like it when you smile at them. That's really normal. You see children do it all the time. And so we had this smiling woman holding this book, and it lent enough credibility that it produced a 7% lift in emails acquired. Now, a 7% lift, may not seem like a lot, but when you take that up to scale, it actually ends up being a lot of extra names that are generated for the same spin. So social proof, very, very powerful. I want to talk about another, I'm not necessarily a psychologist, but a guru in understanding relationships and how people tick. When we talk about personalization and how personalization affects donor conversion. This guy, many of you know his work. His name is Dale Carnegie, and he is famous for this quote that says, a person's name is to that person the sweetest, most important sound in any language. And this has been written in several research studies and scientific academic research papers. I read this one, so you don't have to. It's pretty dry, to be quite honest, but pretty interesting. What's in the name? A complementary means of persuasion. The key concept is that name recognition increases compliance. And so if you're asking someone to do something, calling them by name increases the likelihood that they're going to do that. And so this is, again, a key part of liking. One of the most recent definitions is one's immediate and positive emotional or behavioral response to a specific person, right? And so, how do we know if we like someone? Well, they smile, they look at us, they lean forward, they nod, they mimic us, or they call us by our name, right? So we tested this in an ebook acquisition funnel for a policy group on Stanford's campus called the Hoover Institution. They had this digest called Strategica. It was about military history, and they would start with this ebook, and they would take people to an ebook acquisition page. They had a Facebook ad that was running, and then afterwards they would land on a donation page where some people would give. And the original donation page said, "Thank you, friend." And what we realized was, hey, on the step before this, we actually get the person's first name. And so we have it. We have that data by the time they reach this page. And so what if we just pass that through? So with a little bit of code, we pass their name through and said, "Thank you, Jeff." Strategica will be in your inbox in a few minutes. There's one more thing. This is made possible by the generous support of those who, like you, believe in preserving a free society for America and the world. And the only variable in these two pages was the word friend and Jeff. And that's my name, by the way. And we saw an 83% lift in donations. So think about this. In this funnel, we're getting the same amount of traffic, but 83% more people are giving at the end, with the only variable being that we called them by their name. And here's the data to support it. We needed a sample size of 901 to be valid. We had 2,700. And the level of confidence is 98.4% of the time, which means 98.4% of the time, this is going to produce an 83% lift over saying friend, right? So we took this and we tested it in other places. Your free book is on its way. Thank you, Kevin. Your ebook is on its way. 47% increase in donations. But we've also seen that sometimes too much of a good thing is a bad thing. We had a client who was running a appeal, and they said, "Hey, we want to use the name more than once." So they had this single-use name. We said, "Let's test it." And they put 6 uses of the person's name, and all of a sudden it led to a 24% increase in donations. Again, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Hot dogs are good. Eating the Nathan's hot dog contest in like 30 and 10 minutes does not make you feel good. You've never seen a less happy champion. So the key to this is remembering that, using someone's name is a sweet thing, as Dale Carnegie said. It's the sweetest sound in any language, and can be very effective. So when you have that data, put it to use, but overuse can make people realize that it is marketing when you realize that's not how people talk. Personalization, a very powerful device to use in fundraising. I want to introduce you to one more concept today. It's called sliding doors. If you look at this image, you realize this woman is trying to slackline across a canyon. And this can go one of two ways, which is what this image at the top, or the lines at the top, are trying to show. You have a situation, so you have what is, and then you say, hey, this could go very well. She could get across safely, or she could fall. And luckily she's tied in there, so hopefully she's not going to fall too far. But I think that this is really helpful. We call this the sliding doors concept. And I want to talk about this and how it's we've been able to test with things like this. So, you've got this situation and you say, hey, we're trying to tell a donor, here's what happens when you make a donation. And sometimes we don't want to talk about this, but there's always an implication of what happens without a donation, right? And I think we want to be positive and optimistic and show people that their donation can help, but we don't want to talk about the problem. And what we found is there's a great gap here that results in a lot of money when we're able to do both of these things. So I want to walk you through an example of this. So, here's a Buckner. It's an adoption ministry dedicated to transformation and restoration of the lives we serve. They talk about what happens with their organization, right? Or what their organization does, really. But there's a missing element here. What happens? What's the problem, right? Why does your organization need to exist? When you talk about what your organization does, that does not equal the organization, or the problem that your organization solves. Those are two totally different things. I'm going to show you a couple of ways this has worked out, a couple of ways that we've tested this. Because I think this is one of the things as fundraisers that is hardest for us, is that, as I mentioned earlier, we're really close to our organization. We're able to see all the benefit that our organizations have, but we forget sometimes the donors are really far from it, and we have to lay it out there for them. So we were working with a group, Prison Fellowship International, that was doing child sponsorship, and they had this control page that said, welcome to child sponsorship. It kind of introduced people to this concept of sponsorship, but we said, hey, this doesn't really present, too much of a problem. There's some copy kind of down here that does. Her father is in prison. She lives in the mud brick dwelling in Togo. And so we decided to try to capture more of the problem and more of the solution in that order. So the next 3 minutes of your life to change. This child that was pre-filled right there, just not in the screenshot. This child's life for eternity. You can stand in the gap in prison in one of the poorest countries. Protect this child from the risks, trafficking, abuse, neglect, child labor. Will you sponsor? When you say yes, you will do all of these things, right? And so there's problem and there's more solution. We ran this. We saw a 69% increase in donations. Here's another one. This is a group that was doing a box for married couples to work on their marriage, and they weren't talking about the problem. They were just saying, hey, we've got something for you. And so we crafted some copy for this ad that really talked about what happens if you don't get this, right? And what we saw was a 39% increase in clicks because people were able to better understand the problem, right? Here's another child sponsorship organization. Give a gift, a child of life and hope. That sounds really, really sunny, but the truth is this child, although they're smiling, does not have a great situation right now. And so this group worked with kids whose parents are in prison, and they want to talk about the positivity of that, but let's talk about the reality of what happens. So replace a devastating loss with a secure future. We saw a 25% increase in child sponsored. Now, I want to point out here that this was based on a 52% level of confidence. What this means is 52% of the time it's going to produce a 25% increase. We had to actually do more testing on this. This was a directional lift that showed us that there was promise in this. And all I say this to empathize with everyone here. I'm in your boat too. It's really difficult to remember, right? I think sometimes we forget that we see things differently than our donors. Like we're on one side of the equation and they're on the other, and we're looking at the same value proposition, but we can tend to look at it from an organizational point of view when the donors see it from a different point of view. So, here's an experiment we ran with a seminary here in Dallas. This was their donation form. And, if the fundraiser looks at this, they say, hey, it's clean. There's not a lot of copy. It's low friction. We've really kind of removed the obstacles that could keep someone from giving. But the donor says, hey, this looks like all cost to no value. It's just transactional, right? And so we put some copy on this page, and the fundraiser we received some pushback from the development team that said that way too much copy. You've now pushed the donation form below the fold. There's too much scrolling. And the donor said, oh, wait, you actually given me a compelling reason to give. And when we ran these two against each other, we saw 187% increase in donations. So key point that how you present the problem could be the difference. And, we've got to find ways to get outside of our own eyes, and our own perspective is often too close to the problem and into the donor's eyes. I want to give you guys some resources for free. It's hard to see things through donors' eyes. We found the best way to do this is actually to become one. We do these mystery donor studies all the time, every year. We did one with Salesforce last year on recurring giving. We went and gave recurring gifts to 115 different nonprofit organizations and mapped the entire process and put it in this study, and you can go download that if you like it, recurringgiving.com. We also just finished one with a giant group of organizations, 630 organizations, 10 different verticals, 50 that were international and social service, medium to large size organizations. We made tons of donations and did a lot of email signups and kind of mapped the whole process and talked about how is everyone doing and what can you learn? And really we're trying to do this because we're trying to become like donors again, right? What's it like to be a donor? What are other organizations doing? If you want to get either one of those, you can get those at recurringgiving.com or globalonlinefundraising.com. I'll talk about this communal language concept that I hinted at earlier. So how communal language affects conversion. So I don't want to present this spectrum as binary, either or, good, bad, right? There are two types of language. There's communal language and transactional language. If you think about it on some sort of spectrum, communal language is language where we're trying to talk about what we share and bring ourselves close together. And transactional language is where one party is trying to transact with another, right? Now, an ATM is not a bad thing, I guess, unless your bank account is empty. But there's a lot of transactional language in ATMs because that's what you're there for, right? Sometimes transactional language is okay because it's appropriate. Sometimes communal language is okay. We've been trying to understand and test what actually is happening here in terms of fundraising. So when we have a transactional relationship in fundraising, we're talking about costs and benefits and using that language, and each action is expected to be matched and returned. And you can see this play out in like premiums that are unrelated to the mission, promoting the brand, using what we call transactional language, and talking about that. And so I want to show you an organization that many of y'all know called Caring Bridge, which was running a campaign on their site. This is focusing on mobile, and they had tested a lot of different options to get to this pop-up, and this was the winner, right? This is after like a year of testing through 4 or 5 different campaigns. And what they had done is they had created this countdown to create an hourly goal and then reduce that as more people gave. And they have this language that says your donation we match dollar for dollar thanks to a $30,000 gift from the Caring Bridge Board of Directors. Donate to Caring Bridge now. And so this does some things unintentionally, right? Number one, first off, it tells the donor that they can help reach a goal with just 3 donations. So this big gift, this is an earlier test, how do we make someone's $50 gift make it feel important or more important than just chipping away, at this $30,000 amount? And the answer is, well, we could talk about these hourly goals so they could be 1/3 of reaching this micro goal, right? But when you look at this through the lens of transactional versus communal, what you see is like a lot of transactional language, right? Like your donation, we're already talking about donation, dollar for dollar, $30,000 gift. It almost sets the board of directors up to be the hero. And so we wanted to take a look and test through some communal language. So when we look at communal relationships and fundraising, they're more like friendships. Both parties are mutually invested, and we're showing genuine concern for the well-being of others. And how this works itself out is we make the donor feel good unconditionally, not just when they give. We add value for the donor. We bring them into the communication. So crafted this treatment to run as this pop-up, and it kept the 3 donations because that is actually, while it was transactional, it actually had elements of conversion of helping break down the goal. The goal was actually entirely gone on this treatment. And the first thing said, "You've been such a great friend by staying connected through Caring Bridge." If you don't know what Caring Bridge is, it is a site that lets you, lets people who are going through a health journey write a journal, a safe, secure journal, ad-free, to keep loved ones updated if they're going through anything from rehab to cancer journey or things like that. So as people are visiting the site, they see this pop-up, and the first thing that it says is this communal piece that says, "You've been such a great friend by staying connected." It's affirming them and it's building them up. It goes back to this concept of making the donor feel good unconditionally. And then this concept, "If it's not too much to ask, would you consider giving so that our board of directors can match your gift?" And I want to show these side by side real quick, because there's a different placement here. Number one, we're asking if the donor would consider giving, and not assuming they will, just talking about their presumptive donation. But also, would you consider giving so that our board of directors can match your gift? And this removes the $30,000 number, which is a transactional piece, but it also does a key shift here, which is it puts the donor in play as the one who is making this happen, and almost, I wouldn't say demotes, but it puts the board of directors in a position of service to that donor because they are matching the gift if they choose to give. When we ran this test, we saw a 58% increase in donations, which was incredible. Statistically valid too. We only needed we needed 30,000 people to give required sample size because the conversion rate was just low. They have so much traffic that's seeing this, but this had a sample size of 282,000. So this is going to happen 99% of the time. I say all of this, I show you all these experiments to remind you of one thing. And I love testing and optimization because it produces humility, because it reinforces the fact that we don't know what works, and you don't have to either as a fundraiser, but you can go and find out from your donors. I hope this has been insightful for you. I hope you found one thing today that you can take and either test or engineer into your program. I would always encourage you to test as much as possible. I know it can be hard when you're a small organization, but you can at least start to learn about your donors through testing and not just assume that what has worked for another organization is going to work for yours. Again, these are all experiments that are in our quarterly research journal I mentioned at the top. If you would like me to give you one, I'd be happy to. Just let me know. Candace, I can include a link in follow-up communications if you'd like that, or if you want to pull a list of anyone who requests one in the chat, I'd be happy to fulfill that. But I want to take a few minutes here at the end for questions. So I see some in the Q&A, and
yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, did you want to pull them out, Jeff, or did you want me to?
Yeah, sure. So Jennifer asked, what does that mean for video appeal email? I think that this is going back to the, I'll change the slide here. This is going back to the very first experiment we looked at where the video produced a big increase over the text. I think that I said this very clearly because video has a place. We run campaigns all the time for folks where video is a key part. We've actually done tests where we do a holdout group of people who don't see a video versus a group of people who do see a video, right? So even if it's not directly in the ask, just showing a video increase generosity. The answer is yes. The question is when, right? And so if you're making a video appeal, this test right here shows that on the donation page where you're actually in a more transactional mode, like when someone gets here, we're trying to get them to complete this form. By the time they're here, we're not assuming that they're already motivated to give, but the goal is to get them to complete the form. That video might not have a place there. We had someone else ask a similar question about this. They said, hey, video versus text, is it always one or the other, or video and text? And I want to be very clear that like, just because this test got this sort of lift does not mean it will work for your organization. Donors are motivated by a lot of different things. That's why we like working with a really wide variety of groups, because we find these things to be, varied in how people respond, because people are different, groups of people are different, causes are different. What we found is there are like child welfare causes where people want lots of information, like the audience is a more deliberative audience. They need more information to make their decision. And we have some where people are more when we talk about buyer modalities, they're more like competitive, which means like, I want to help. I'm ready. I'm convinced. Like, get out of my way and let me jump in. Right? They're more activist oriented. So I think it's important to test this stuff and to continue to understand what works specifically for your group of donors. People are making this easy. They're putting the related questions right next to each other. I really appreciate it, McKenna and Karen. You guys asked basically the same question. If we're just starting A/B testing, what is a good place to start? Website, emails, campaigns. There's so many things, but being understaffed makes it overwhelming and difficult to track. 100%. Karen said, I feel like our website email traffic or email list is too small for statistically significant testing. Can you give an idea of how many data points you need to do this thing? This is where I always hesitate to say this because I don't want to appear to contradict myself, but I do want to help. That is just a reality, statistical reality. If you have a small email list or not a lot of website traffic, it can be hard to get a valid lift. And I don't want to overrate statistical validity because there are things sometimes, there are tests we're running where we can't get the test to validate. It's just not big difference one way or another, but we might see 100% lift that's only 80% validity. And you have to make decisions sometimes in the absence of clear data, right? So sometimes things that are directional, I've heard this as a rule of thumb from some folks that I really respect in terms of statistics, but they say, once you get to 80% confidence, any downside or decrease has been eliminated, and it's just using the remaining 20% to confirm the amount of increase. Or if it's a decreasing test, you can say any amount of increase has been obliterated, and you're just trying to confirm the amount of decrease. But all that to say, I think that it can be really hard for smaller organizations, for sure. I think easy ways to start are things like subject lines. We've got tons of subject line test ideas in the library, because when you have a small file, getting a 20 to 30% lift in open rate can be the difference in a lot of donations, right? And especially getting a difference in open rate and engagement. I usually think that we usually say you need at least 500 visitors to your donation page every month to really get a test. One of the problems with testing is if you let tests go multiple months, there's seasonality and a lot of factors that can throw off your variability. So all that to say, testing can be really hard for small organizations. It's just a fact. I wish I could change it, but I can't. So I would encourage you to take as many things as you can from the research library and try them. Learn from those who have gone before you, which is something I think we're all kind of committed to doing. Lisa asked, how big does your sample size need to be for a statistically significant result? That actually differs based on the lift. So 100% lift is going to require a much smaller sample size to validate than a 10% lift. I always say a single digit percentage lift is really hard to validate. It's going to take a long time and a big sample size, because it's just a very small difference. But if, like we saw with that video versus text donation page, there's a 500% difference. It barely needs, it doesn't need a lot of traffic at all. We have some resources too on our site for small organizations for things like, hey, let us help you craft a better donation page. These are things that we've tested over and over again, and they appear to be as close to universal truth as you might going to get with testing. Ways to craft your main donation page and put a headline, the value proposition, and how your gift array should look and things like that. We only really include those. We have some posters you can actually print out. We only include those if they've been tested with like at least 5 different organizations. They sort of repeat across different verticals. So Natalie, last question, also asked an interesting one. Do you think organizations should do lots of A/B tests themselves, or could this hurt consistency and brand awareness? It's a great question. I don't think that those two things are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think you can do lots of testing and still have great brand consistency, because I think the things that you're testing are not always elements of your brand. It may be how you talk. And I know that a lot of things like brand voice are actually sometimes dictated internally from the brand, but also the learnings that you learn can inform brand voice, to where your donors actually help shape your brand voice, because they are telling you through their responses what is most effective. So yes, I think organizations should do lots of A/B tests, because I believe that the opposite of that, if you're not doing any A/B tests, is you're missing a lot of learnings that could tell you a lot more about what motivates people to give. And you're also missing a lot of potential results. And I showed some green arrows in this. We learned a lot from red arrows too. We learned a lot from what people don't want, what they don't respond to. And so testing gives you the best of both worlds. You get to learn what makes people say yes, and also what makes them say no. And sometimes we learn more from learning what makes people say no than what makes people say yes, and helping engineer that in. So I put my email here, phone number. Reach out if you have any questions further than this. But
yeah, Jeff, that was wonderful. I know I saw lots of people want access to the journal, what is it, quarterly report. How do we get our hands on that?
Yeah, if I was smart, I'd put a short link here so you can just click to get it. But let me do this real quick. I will stop sharing my screen. I will grab the link and I'll paste it in the chat really quick, and then everyone can go get it. Does that sound good?
Okay, cool. I think that's great. Or if it's on the website and you want me to grab it for you, I can do that too.
One sec, I'll show it to you right here. Here it is. Incoming. Yeah, I love the research journal, not just because I made it, but because it gives you a really wide variety of different types of tests, and also just what it is that is working across different organizations. One sec, I got you.
Yeah, it sounds like a great resource for our nonprofit folks here today. So is it kind of like they just sign up for the download? Okay.
Yep. Sorry, this is I could have.
And then yeah, so yep, we pasted. I'll also put in NextAfter's website again.
Cool.
And then Jeff's email in case you want to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll find this and send it out. But if you want to, I'll send you the link, Jenna. You can find it on our website. And I'm just terrible at doing things under pressure.
Yeah, no problem. And then also, yeah, so just I guess the journal and any newsletter that we can sign up, subscribe. Should we just do the subscribe option on the website?
Yeah, there are a lot of different things to subscribe. We roll out new research all the time, and we don't spam you either. We give a ton of stuff away, so you can go anywhere and download any of those resources and subscribe. I mentioned recurringgiving.com for the recurring study, and excited to show you as much as we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this very, very informative session. We are very grateful to have you, and thank you so much to NextAfter for being one of our sponsors today to make it possible for all of our nonprofit pros to attend for free. So we're very grateful for your generosity.
Awesome.